All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to the first panel of GFM. We're going to kick it off with this. We are going to be talking about spirit work. First, we'll say, my name is Ree. Character is Rune. See me around. I've been a practicing demonologist for 2 years. So, I'm going to start off by saying we're essentially beginners. So let's go with a beginners panel from beginners.
Beginners for beginners, yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Vesper, and this is my Fursuit Morning Star. I am also a practicing demonologer for about a year now. So, as she said, this is a panel basically by beginners for beginners. We're basically, so this is a, sorry.
Based around paganism.
Yeah. So this is a panel based on the more spiritual side of paganism that leans on the polytheistic side as well. So we're going to be talking about different kind of deities and spirit connections, how to communicate with them, research, and at the end, we'll have a Q&A for anyone who might have questions. And so, first off, we were just wondering, is anyone kind of like involved in like paganism, witchcraft, any of that stuff? Okay, we're just, all right.
All right, start off with the basics, what paganism is and isn't. Paganism is not a monotheistic religion, by that meaning there's no singular entity in the pantheon you connect with, pantheon being the group of deities you subscribe to. Say you like the Greek gods and goddesses. If you like, say, Hades, you know there's Zeus, Poseidon, Hermes, so on. That's what you call a pantheon. And then paganism isn't a witchcraft practice. It's strictly a religion that you can involve witchcraft with any sort of spell work and yada yada. Spirit work isn't required for witchcraft. And we're going to be mostly focusing on the pagan side of the practice. Yeah.
So basically, like, so what is spirit work? Because kind of a broad topic and not very common, and it's becoming more common, and as more people are kind of getting into paganism and witchcraft and stuff. So basically, a spirit is any kind of entity. It could be a deity, which is a god or goddess, a nature spirit, your ancestors, angels, or demons. So as we already said, there's like the main pantheons, which is like Greek, Norse, or the Egyptian, but there's like a lot of more minor ones that aren't as well known or popular. Like there's Celtics, the Infernals, and etc.
And now, you got that basics down. The start is, if you're interested in connecting with one of these spirits, whom is it that you would like? Honestly, the easiest process is if you think Norse gods. Do you like Freya? If you have an instant drawing to, okay, you like what she's associated with, fiery, feminine, war type energy, and you like the Norse group spirits, that's honestly kind of the best calling to work with said spirits. And once you feel like a pull towards wanting that fiery energy, what's best to do is to research that spirit, their lores, their mythos, what they're all about, what their likes and dislikes are. And you can also look into other people who work with that spirit, what they expect, what their offerings are, which that will be talked about later on. And that's just the general gist of the very broad process of research.
Alright, I can say that. I can say that. And don't take the lore literally, because this isn't like, you know, like, we know a lot of this stuff, like, this stuff didn't actually happen, you know, like,
Giants and stuff.
like the giants and stuff, and
hunting down
people and stuff.
Like,
But the lore is mainly there to, as like a story of how to figure out who exactly these entities are, or
yeah,
their characteristics and stuff. It's not meant to be literal. So,
you want to talk about the first process of that? Wheel of Fortune.
or you could just wing it. You could ask the universe to send you a random deity or spirit to watch over you, or whatever you want from them.
So I'm going to talk about my personal experience with that, because I took the Wheel of Fortune method because I didn't know what I was doing. So you start by receiving signs from a spirit. For me, it was a lot of like feathers, a lot of different dreams, snakes, stuff like that. I started going down the list of, some spirits I felt drawn to, just like number them down. I got down to 2, and that was either Loki or Lucifer. I did a few more confirmations, and it was not Loki, it was Lucifer. You can ask that by asking for seeing snakes on the road, if that's what they're associated with, which is what happened to me, or seeing a lot of feathers when you're walking, or dreams. And then you can also, I want to add to this.
Oh no.
If you aren't sure, you can find Etsy and stuff. There are plenty of readers on there that do deity confirmations.
Oh yeah.
They're pretty cheap. So if you were stuck in between the indecisiveness of who it is, that can be a big help. It helped me a lot too.
Yeah, and for me, I was at work. I was working at a factory, having an existential crisis, as you do. And I was like, oh, God, somebody please help me. And that's basically how I started connecting with Lucifer as well. Because sometimes they do, if your friends are working with a certain deity or entity, they kind of like, they spread fast in friend groups. They like, that's just how it is. Alright. So, communication-wise, so like, say you picked out a deity or a spirit that you want to talk with, communicate. How exactly does that go on? Well, there's different methods of divination or senses or physical signs, like we were talking about snakes and feathers and all that fun stuff. Oh, go ahead and say this. Like, I also got sent a snake because I was having some doubts, and I was like, I'll throw away those doubts if I just get sent a snake, and unfortunately that happened while we were on a hike in autumn, like in the middle of fall. But so with other divination methods, you can use tarot or oracle cards. So you want me to see? So like tarot cards, we all probably know what tarot is. And this is the classic deck, which is probably the most common that you can find anywhere. But if you don't click with that, you can find just any kind of deck that will kind of click with you. I actually have a Pokemon one that I use. And if that's not your cup of tea, there's also Oracle decks, which to me is easier to use. Because with tarot, it's the same 78 cards, and they each have a specific meaning. So like the Two of Coins or the Empress, the Emperor, every tarot deck is those same cards. But Oracle decks can have any number of cards, and they can say whatever. They can have just a single word or like an actual little paragraph that says what the card means. You can also use a pendulum like this. You can ask it yes or no questions, and it'll swing forward for yes or sideways for no. There's also runes, but we don't have experience with runes. We don't really use those. They're like little symbols on wood or rocks or whatever. And there's spirit boards, which is more commonly known as a Ouija board. I also don't personally use those, but I feel like Hollywood kind of likes to be a little exaggeration with that. So, and you want to talk about the psychic?
Yeah, so that's the tools part. That's what you start out in the beginning, because it's hard to open up and really communicate with them on a one-on-one basis. After some time of using, because actually tarot opens up some of your psychic senses too with claircognizance, which just helps you read into stuff easier. You can kind of put that in intuition as well, kind of claircognizance, and that's hand in hand. But psychic senses are called clairs. There's clairvoyance is being able to see stuff. Clairaudience is being able to hear stuff. That's something that everyone has. There'll be some people who have to lead us with it, and I say only some people have these abilities, but I had nothing, and then I started developing them after a while. So clear work, spirit, psychic senses, that would be an entire panel on its own. There's a lot of resources on that.
Look up YouTube.
Yeah.
Just watch YouTube for that.
So aside from just be able to feel them and see them and stuff, you also have dream work, which some people do catch on to very easily. You ask them for signs of dreams, they'll give you something, like in my case asking for a snake in a dream about snake that night. It's pretty good.
Right, pretty good.
Then you have meditation, which is essentially kind of like trance work. You kind of go into a half asleep, half awake state, and after time that gets easier and better. But yeah, psychic senses is something do not stress about in the beginning. You will compare yourself to others very easily. It's not a fun time once the imposter syndrome sets in, believe me.
Imposter syndrome is a thing, and doubt is pretty big. You'll go through the motions. You'll think you're over it, and then you'll be right back where you were.
I will say the beginning stages of all this stuff is by far the hardest and most stressful. It took me like 6 months to a year to get over that.
I feel like it took me a year. It took me a long time.
But give it time, keep going at it, just be persistent. It's a fun time.
Someone's gonna talk about the difference between.
Yeah. So with that figured out, because the whole process in communication is to figure out what the spirit's going to help you with, what they're going to help you evolve into, and everything like that. You have two main categories with that is deity work and deity worship. Worship is what most people start off with. That's just getting their stuff, which we'll talk about worship next. But that's just more of a passive, you invite the spirit around you, and they're just passively helping you out. And then you have work, where they actively help you develop something. Like if you want to work on them with public speaking today, they can help you, push you to do stuff like this. And that goes into a whole wide plethora of things, of confidence, any sort of stuff like that.
Alright. So, with that being said, we'll go more into those two different categories. So, what does worship really go into? I feel like it kind of gets a bad reputation nowadays. But it can be, like, fun, honestly. I like it. So, basically, a really simple way to start, like, worshiping a spirit, entity, what have you. Set up an altar space. You can just, basically, it could be like a cloth somewhere with like crystals, statues, bowls that you can put food in, stuff like that. And you don't have to think that you need a lot of money to do this kind of stuff. I started out with just a bandana and some cool rocks I found outside and some feathers. So it can literally just be whatever you feel like, oh, I want that in my little altar space. And sometimes if you're going shopping and you do work with a specific entity, if you see something and you're like, oh, I bet they'd like that. That's probably a good sign that maybe you can buy that and put it on their altar. I'm not gonna go into that. Another thing I really like to do is like devotional jewelry. Like basically have a piece of jewelry that you can dedicate to that spirit. Pretty much all the jewelry I wear is, except for my bracelets. So like rings, necklaces and stuff. A lot of spirits don't have like, when picking out a dedicational jewelry, you can go with like
Stones they
like the stone, the kind of crystals they like to wear around your neck, or like some deities have like an animal that represents them. Oh. Give me a moment. Oh, okay. As I was saying, some deities have like an animal that represents them. You know, we're all furries probably here. So, you know, like Anubis, wear stuff with dogs on it, or for Bast, get like some jewelry with cats on it or something. Another thing, like angels and demons have like sigils, so you can find that stuff easily on Etsy, because the sigil is like their signature basically. And there's so much jewelry with like sigils on it and stuff you can get. Another thing you can do on the worshiping aspect, you can do devotional acts. Like mentioning, like a devotional act can be anything from like, if you worship like Aphrodite, you can just practice self-care and that could be a devotional act. Or you could mention their name like in a panel, like I said I would do for King Belial, and then that would be considered a devotional act. Or like I said Anubis earlier with the dog thing, you could volunteer at an animal shelter with dogs or something. Oh man. Or a lot of deities and spirits actually really like art. Again, I said this is FurryCon. You could draw dedicational artwork for them. You could design a persona based off of them. Do not look at my fursuit. Also, like, some more smaller things you could do is, like, prayers or hymns. That's, I don't have too much knowledge in that. It's basically, you know, everyone knows what, like, that kind of stuff is.
Just helps you feel closer.
Huh?
Just helps you feel closer.
Yeah, it just helps you feel closer. You can even make your own to kind of help that connection.
Alright, that's the basics of worship. And the whole working aspect, that's whenever they help you manifest change. When it comes to working, you technically already have a worship relationship set up with them. You just add working to that afterwards. Sometimes you go straight into working. I've done that before. Working aligns more with witchcraft because essentially witchcraft is, to its truest nature, bringing about change, altering stuff with yourself and the world around you. This is where they can help you with that confidence working, spell work, candle work, anything like that works. The changes in yourself, I talked about that earlier. It can be confidence, public speaking. And once you do develop this sort of relationship with them, they do have more say, more interaction in what you do. They say, hey, no, don't do that, do this. Or if you don't want to do something like, hey, do this, you need to work on that. And that's where things get fun and terrifying at times. So far, I've not had any terrible experiences with working with them. It's just been basic, uncomfortable stuff to help you bust out of your shell or anything like that. I do enjoy the working side of it because I do like seeing change, bit of manifesting different parts of yourself. It's nice. So with that, we're going to talk about the replacement parts.
Alright, so all that that being said, for the love of all that is good in the world, this is not a replacement for medical or therapeutic care. I just want to say that. Please, if you're having like an actual very, if you're having an issue, please seek help. This can just be used as a supplement, mainly like mental.
Yeah, it's mostly mental.
It's mostly mental work. So I just wanted to say that. So.
Then you go to what you can expect to get out of it.
So what you can expect out of it?
Yeah, what you expect to get out of it, and then the third one. Or that point to the other two.
Alright. So that being said, what exactly can you expect to gain from this kind of work? Well, first off, it's really different for everybody. So whatever that phrase is, two people will not have the same experience as each other. Like for me, I do think that I've become a lot more confident, even though I still kind of have that stage fright of hosting a panel. But it's also made me come out of my shell and be more extroverted. And currently I'm working on not being so wishy-washy and indecisive. Thank you, I can't think of words right now, because I'm terrible at that. But right now it's helping me work on the indecisiveness and just the basic awkwardness of being a human person in today's society. Do you want to talk about your personal, or you kind of already did?
Yeah, that's how
Alright.
I'm working.
And I do just want to say, as like a disclaimer, as I said, everyone's going to have different experiences. Someone might practice in a different way than you do, and you might not like how someone so you might So you might not like the way a certain person will practice their own stuff. And people will definitely not like the way you do it, but that's okay. Everyone just do your own thing. Don't bully other people that do stuff you don't like. And don't argue about stuff that's kind of dumb. Like if someone pictures Thor as blonde and muscular like the Marvel Thor, don't argue with someone that might see Thor as the more huskier, red-haired type of deity. Because it's helping no one.
If you couldn't tell, there is a lot of drama in this area. You're going to notice that whenever you start looking into the resources. YouTube's good. You can you can type in anything. If you want to work with Hermes, type in working with Hermes on YouTube, and you'll get a long list of people who work with him, what they do and everything. TikTok, ?
I'm just gonna...
TikTok's where the drama festers.
I'm just to... TikTok is fun for funny skits and stuff, but I wouldn't make it your main source of information. There's a lot of just iffy things on TikTok. So if you do go to TikTok, just be careful, and we'll get into that more with the press.
There's also an app called Amino, Paganism and Witchcraft. Many of you probably know Furry Amino's a thing, but Amino also has the Paganism and Witchcraft part, which actually was really helpful for me in the beginning. A good baseline, basic information. They actually do monitor that a lot better than TikTok. And then you just got the classic books on Greek mythology, Norse mythology, what have you. And there's also Working with Spirits books. Yeah, that's, again, another thing I did want to say about this. If you like an author I know it's nice to find an author you like and resonate with, but don't feel like you have to practice exactly like that author, like that internet personality does, because that definitely hurts your practice in the long run, coming from experience. And that adds to cross-referencing everything you read, everything you research online. See if there's more than one account of that thing. Definitely.
Yeah, and like, don't be afraid to have fun with it. Like, you can honestly pick and choose what you want with all this stuff. Like, if you're like, oh, I kind of want to incorporate this, but I don't like this, that's completely valid and fine. I started using divination with Pokemon cards recently, and like, that gets into a whole other thing, but like, you can have fun. You can like, do whatever the heck you want. As long as you don't go too crazy. There's still like, we live in a society. Alright.
And that's the closing information of what we have. Now, I know a lot of this stuff was quick information. This panel was generally just to get people interested. If you liked what you heard, this is like something you would be interested in looking into, research it and find your own way to practice. But yeah, now we can go into the Q&A if anyone does have like any questions for us.
Oh no, I knew this was gonna happen. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so like, if you don't have a specific deity or spirit, doing the random, is there a danger to doing the randomness?
I've not heard many accounts of that. It's rare to get something you don't want. I mean, sometimes, like Loki, for example, likes to pull pranks on people. You might think you're connecting with Apollo. You're into this 6 months later, you find something sus, you find out it's been Loki the whole time. That happens with a lot of people. But it's not really dangerous stuff.
Personally, I can kind of add to that because I don't actually follow a very specific deity or anything. I've explored a lot of them, but a lot of the stuff I do is very, I don't know a proper word, but solo and kind of free feeling.
Yeah, that's a
you
big
know.
thing.
And I've never had a bad experience in practicing that way.
I
But
want
that,
to add.
You should put it too.
Oh, okay. I want to add, but there is a lot of fear-mongering online, though, so just kind of watch out for that, because some people will be like, you have to play by the book. If you don't, you'll end up, like, getting some kind of negative attachment, but, like, if you're safe, like, you don't really have a lot to worry about. Just, be smart about things.
So, I missed the beginning of this. I was a little bit late.
Oh.
But I got the general gist of it, and I was wondering, like, so in the whole Anubis thing, a huge fan of the concept of him and all that stuff. Like, the god of judgment, what you've done in life, is basically, deified in death and all that stuff. Like, your glory and all that stuff. I listened to a lot of Sabaton, and I always think if that had any overlap, like they covered war, and the suffering of others. I was wondering if that had any overlap with this. I totally missed the beginning. I could really use, some abbreviation. I really did miss the whole beginning.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if, like, say, worship of that, in a sense, has any overlap.
Worship of
Of the fallen and wanting to remember them. Like, there was any similarity between the two.
So, like, general in what way?
You appreciate the fallen, and you essentially have a worship of them. And Anubis is sort of like that in that sense, because he's the god of death for Egypt, for example. He's a god of death and judgment. And basically his thing is, he judges, when people pass. Or am I on the wrong page with this? I just wanted to get your opinion on what my thinking was right now, on what I just heard. And again, I missed the beginning.
So you're wanting to connect with what he's associated with, basically?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
Trying to connect dots.
Yeah, that's definitely part
Trying
of
to
the...
assemble a puzzle.
Yeah, that's part of the worship, actually, because you
Yeah.
do work with what they're associated with. You honor what they're all about. So, the forgotten is even a part of him.
And often a lot of people who do great great things for other good people when they die are not remembered for it, and that's essentially the general idea.
Yeah, you can
know, behind
definitely.
that.
Yeah, you can definitely honor that with Anubis or any other chthonic being.
Yeah. I have a lot of inspiration.
Oh,
here.
yeah. Yeah.
You want
Anyway.
I guess my question is kind of regarding. First of all, you mentioned like Wiccan in the beginning. Is that a specific deity, or specific group of deities, or is that just nature overall, or? Cause I've been in several different specifically Wicca panels. And
My knowledge on Wicca is limited,
Okay.
but I do know they generally have the god and the goddess. Red candle for the god, green candle for the goddess. And you can, from what I know, you can pick and choose the god and the goddess, but it's always the pair.
and my second question, you mentioned like getting a random deity. Was there like a random deity generator or something?
Yeah, no.
You
We
say-
completely understand.
Yeah, you basically just put the intention out of you'd like to connect with some form of divinity.
Okay. Because I guess we discussed a lot of Greek or Roman just smashed them together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they could be similar.
And
Greek,
you-
Roman, and like Egyptian, but like what about Hindu? What about
Oh.
a variety of indigenous?
Yeah, you can even.
Yeah.
In Africa, So,
Yeah, you can
I see.
choose the
Okay.
group.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like we kind of just covered like a very loose
Yeah.
number of them.
Okay.
Like we kind of covered like the more well-known, but you can, you can, like even if you have a specific pantheon, like you said, the Hindu or stuff like that, you could probably put out an intention more so for that specific group if you don't have one zeroed in, but you are more interested in a specific pantheon, you could probably do that.
Has that been that?
Oh.
You can also say you are very oblivious to signs like I was, and say, please, very straightforward. That happened.
Okay.
Anything else? What time is it?
Another question.
Oh, okay, hold on.
We have discussed that.
Oh man, we went overtime.
Do you think, if you like had contact or whatever, do you think that they like ever mess with your readings with like the cards?
Oh. Yeah.
Again, depends on the spirit.
Unfair.
If you're trying to figure something out, but they're wanting you to know something else, they will keep giving you like the same reading over and over again until it clicks. Generally, I've not had much experience with that. It wasn't pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And also, that can be a boundary set with them. Please
Oh yeah.
don't try to mislead you. Be straightforward and they will listen.
Yeah. Yeah, boundaries are good to set because sometimes they can be pushed and you'll be like, I'm not okay with this. Let's there's a line that cannot be crossed, because even with working with divinity, you still are allowed to have your
opinion.
you're still allowed to have your own opinion, and you might not always agree with what a divine deity or spirit wants for you, and sometimes you can have clashing opinions. I can try and think of an example, but
One question, just because you brought up the spirit boards, like the Ouija boards. You brought up like spirit boards and Ouija boards,
yeah.
and like I'm familiar with the one on your mask, and
Oh.
I think I've seen a couple, like an anime, I've seen Japanese version. Just could you go a bit more in depth with those? Like you mentioned, Hollywood kind of ruined them a bit, and I guess I will freely admit, like I've seen all the Insidious, I've seen Paranormal
Yeah.
Activity.
hey,
And I know right out of
Hey,
Ouija boards.
yeah,
So.
hey, I love watching, like, I've been in this kind of work, but I still love watching, like, cheesy horror movies,
Okay.
so I get you.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part, Ouija board's a tool like tarot, anything like that. I mean, I would not recommend taking a Ouija board into a graveyard at midnight and asking for stuff because ghosts can be your biggest pain.
There's a cover that in more Hollywood, but Ouija Origin of Evil, I think that was one of the last rules. Don't play in a graveyard.
Like, I've tried using it before. I'm not that big on it just because It's just a more difficult method for me. Everyone's gonna have, like, some people's gonna naturally be more drawn to tarot, oracle, or pendulums.
And I'll add on to that. And like I said, Hollywood kind of blows it out of proportion. Like, if you use a Ouija board, you're not gonna just, like, get a horrible negative, like, attachment to you. I mean, you could if, what?
If you do it very sketchy.
If you do it sketchy, like in a graveyard, probably not a good thing. But if you're, like, at home, you have, like, protections up, like crystals around or whatever, you'd probably be fine. Oh, and another thing is, make sure you ask for a specific spirit with, like, Ouija boards. Don't just say, hey, is anyone here? Because you could get anything. That's kind of the main thing with Ouija boards. You know.
Yes.
Anyone else? Okay.
I think we have it done.
Okay, yeah, I think that's it because, and if anyone does think of any more questions, we actually left our business cards, our DMs are open.
Yeah, if you want to talk about any sort of deities, spirits, what have you, or you want a fursuit, either or, I'm there.
Yeah, so, okay, there's that. My DMs are open if you think of any late questions and you want to contact me. But again, thank you so much for everyone for showing up because I was nervous because this is the first panel of the con and it's super early and I was like, I don't think anyone's gonna show up. And it's a niche topic, but I appreciate it. You've all been a lovely audience.
Thank you.